pandemic.
A nervous wait for some 50 Australians with SARS symptoms. Their test results are expected this week. Evan Batten, 10 News. The killer bug is now striking the front line of defence. Doctors, nurses and healthcare workers now make up a quarter of all victims. And SARS is becoming more aggressive. The number of victims expected to triple within weeks. Despite government assurances it's under control, doctors are no longer willing to hide their grave fears.
If there's any further outbreak of cases.
The Doctors' Union recommending drastic moves to deal with the epidemic. They say all businesses should be shut down for a fortnight to stop the infection spreading from person to person in the workplace. Tourist numbers dropping off dramatically as paranoia grows.
I still feel like people are spitting on me and that people are trying to make me sick.
The Council of Europe will launch a probe into pharmaceutical companies accused of manipulating swine flu data. This follows a claim by a renowned German scientist that vaccine manufacturers pressured the World Health Organization into declaring a swine flu pandemic, seeking to increase profits. RT's Laura Emmett has more.
It was supposed to be a deadly pandemic, but it's so far nothing more than a serious cold. And it's left a lasting headache as a debate rages over whether pharmaceutical companies deliberately misled governments about the seriousness of swine flu to make them stockpile vaccines. The legal standards organisation, the Council of Europe, will gather the arguments.
Britain has spent a fortune on preparations. We've caused a great deal of stress to the population. People are very anxious about it. And we've distorted the priorities of our health service. And I believe when we have a thorough investigation and we look at this, we'll discover that that's the story. The world has been subjected to a stunt for their own greedy interests of the pharmaceutical companies.
European countries bought billions of dollars worth of vaccine from pharmaceutical companies including Baxter, GlaxoSmithKline and Sanofi Pasteur. Some of the contracts included a clause where governments could get out of buying the drugs if they were no longer needed, but some, notably ones with GlaxoSmithKline, did not.
We continue to support governments in managing the H1N1 influenza pandemic. This includes ongoing discussions about existing orders for our pandemic vaccines.
Governments all over Europe are now saddled with billions of dollars worth of unnecessary swine flu vaccine. They are trying to sell it, but supply now far exceeds demand. So because governments wanted to be seen to be acting decisively, the European taxpayer is finding himself seriously out of pocket. Health expert Gawain Toler says farmers will be farmers, and it's governments who should have been less gullible.
Pharmaceutical companies, of course, have a huge economic interest in encouraging concern over health. I think you have to blame the governments for going along with it, for not having natural scepticism of the claims of somebody who has a financial interest. The government wanted to be seen to be doing something useful. And in that way, they encouraged the fear that then forced them to act.
At the height of the pandemic, it was predicted that around 65,000 people in Britain would die. So far, there have been only 360. Critics of the World Health Organization, which dubbed swine flu a pandemic, said it was clear from early on that the illness wouldn't be as serious as first thought. Also, it was initially believed that 2 vaccinations would be needed to protect against the virus. Later, it was found that 1 was enough. Now, European governments are coming under fire for wasting billions of dollars on vaccines that would never be used.
This does seem to have been a massive waste of money. Of course, it's the responsibility of the government to look out for these kind of crises as they're approaching. Of course, actually around the world, countries were ordering vaccines and so on, but no one seems to have gone over the top as much as Britain has. Yet again, Britain has led the world really in wasting taxpayers' money on a threat that either hasn't materialised or has turned out to be very different to the way it was anticipated.
Germany, France and the UK say they want to sell off their stockpile of vaccines. While there are countries willing to buy, the passing of the global threat and millions of doses flooding the market means prices for the vaccine will plummet. And the epidemic's initial misdiagnosis means it may be a very expensive mistake.
It's the kind of information that fuels conspiracy theorists everywhere. Danish journalists claim that several World Health Organization advisors are on the payroll of leading pharmaceutical companies that make swine flu vaccines. We're now joined by Louise Voller from Copenhagen. She's a journalist at the Danish Daily Information newspaper and co-author of the report. Hello to you, Mrs. Voller. Thank you very much in advance for joining us today. I'll get straight to the point. So, what is the connection between the WHO and big pharmaceutical companies?
Well, the biggest problem seems to be that we don't know enough. There's not enough transparency on financial disclosure on the expert groups used by WHO. So, when in time of crisis such as swine flu pandemic, WHO gather an expert group to find out what are the recommendations. What are the recommendations of the vaccine, of the disease, and so on. What we do know is that the pharmaceutical industry is present at the meetings of WHO expert groups, but what we don't know is what they talk about. And another thing is that scientists who appear to be independent are also hired consultants working for the same pharmaceutical companies who produce the vaccines. This is clearly an issue that needs to be taken care of.
Right, right. Well, certainly this is a bit of a potentially touchy subject for not just the pharmaceutical companies, but for the WHO as well.
The World Health Organization is spreading more fear about another outbreak. Oh yes, run and hide. There's a new virus, a coronavirus, on the loose, according to the WHO. It's called MERS, M-E-R-S. They're calling it a Middle Eastern virus. You ever notice how the WHO always blames some region of the world that they would like to turn into an enemy? You know, it's like a Hong Kong virus. It's a Mexican virus. Now it's a Middle Eastern virus. Why not just call it the Al-Qaeda flu? You know, just get right to the chase. But you notice they never say any viruses ever originate in America. It's not like the USA coronavirus pandemic. They would never announce that. It's always some third world or developing nation group or some political enemy. Yeah, it's a Chinese virus, gonna get you. Pigs from Hong Kong. It's just, it's insane. Sorry, I mean, I'm not trying to turn this into a comedy show, but sometimes the official news is so hilarious that you just got to comment with a little bit of satire. But apparently 3 people have died from a deadly new SARS-like virus, according to the Daily Mail. 3 more people, bringing the total death toll to 27. 27, yeah. Of course, let's see. 60,000 Americans were killed by one drug that the FDA refused to pull off the market. That's more Americans than died in the entire Vietnam War, and they didn't warn you about that, but they will warn you about 27 people dying by a virus that they can blame on Al-Qaeda. Who else? All right, next story. Arsenic is being intentionally added to conventional chicken. It's true. Arsenic, of course, is a toxic metal. You can find it on the table of elements. It is AS. That's the short version of it. If you're curious about that, go back to your science class and check that out. Arsenic, it is a highly toxic, deadly metal. In fact, arsenic was the poison of choice for assassinations throughout world history until about the last, I'd say, 100, 150 years, when arsenic detection became easier to do. It was easy to kill somebody with arsenic because it's tasteless. So you could slip it into their food or their drink, and yeah, pretty soon, the king's dead, and you got a new emperor, a new king, taken over. So arsenic was the poison of choice. Now it's the poison of choice for the chicken industry in the United States. The FDA says, yeah, you can add arsenic to chicken drugs. So these are big pharma's drugs being fed to the chicken to increase chicken yields by the chicken farmers, but the drug contains arsenic. Arsenic is also used, by the way, to treat lumber and make it weatherproof. And if you go buy that lumber, you'll notice that it has a little warning on it, a cancer warning that says, don't breathe the sawdust from this lumber if you saw into it or you're building with it or doing something. Don't even touch it. It's so toxic, but it's safe to put in the chicken, says the FDA. Doesn't that just make you feel good about eating some chicken nuggets from time to time? Yes, indeed. All right, so the FDA always doing the devil's business of destroying health. I love it. What a wonderful group. We should give those people humanitarian awards. They're great.